Yo, welcome to Willys World. Dopest dope you're ever going to smoke. In today's episode, we're with the one and only Phil Casabon and my very good friend and colleague, Mr. Eric Iberg. Now, first off, Phil and I share a certain homage to Iberg because of one movie that was probably one of the most impactful movies in my entire life, which was the one and only Royalty. And Phil, when I was 14, I was at SMS, and a young and virile Eric Iberg came over and gave me a mixtape from the upcoming Royalty soundtrack, which was very, very impactful on me. And I remember listening to that tape probably about 2,000 times.
Wicked. Big up Bugs, the mixer on the Inspired Royalty or the royaltytour.com mixtape.
So do you remember the first time that you saw that movie, Phil?
Nope, not right now. No, I can't say the first time I saw it, but I was introduced to it by the local crew, the 10-12 crew at my ski resort. They were all 4 year older than me, and they were all already into weed smoking and just a bit more rebel than I was. So I looked up to them, and they told me I had to see this movie, and I'm not sure when or where I saw it first, but they put me on.
To put it in perspective, Phil Casabon in 2001 was 11 years old. So it was a pretty young age to be fully in the scene. Yeah. And it was a young sport too at that time.
Yeah, my old coach was the Dinner Star team manager. When that shout out to Cedric Messier, OG motherfucker. I don't know if you remember him, Phil, but Eric definitely does. So
Yeah,
can you tell me? So can you tell me, Eric, how did you originally your first movie that was called Spun? Is that correct? I remember seeing it on a VHS tape that some dude had dubbed maybe 5 years later, and I don't remember how or why I got it. I've only seen it once.
Nice. Yeah, that was my first movie. Spun.
Have you ever seen that movie, Phil?
Yes, sir, I have. It's a classic. It's a
And,
classic. It was blunted by Phillies. Who was the sponsor, Zyberg?
We had Philly Blunts, we had Tanqueray, and we had Hennessy.
What the fuck is Tanqueray?
Well, you don't spell it, son. You drink it. Didn't you watch the movie?
I don't know what Tanqueray is.
It's in a green bottle, man. It's gin. It's gin.
That's fucking hilarious. So skiing slowly come along and progressed. Phil, you obviously were pretty probably influenced by the three Phils and JF, JP, all that stuff. What mountain did you actually grow up in Quebec? Like, what was your local hill? Can't hear you, bro. You've gone MIA.
No more. Oh, there he's unmuted.
Yep. It's called Valids Park, and it's about an hour and a half away from where the three Phils grew up, called Le Relais. And yeah, it's a small hill, about 200 meters. My grandfather and his two brothers founded the resort, so I was fortunate enough to grow up right next to it and have a free ski pass from the day I was born.
Damn, I want to know more. Your grandpa started Valdu Park?
Yep, with his brothers.
Did they cut down the trees and stuff?
Yeah, they might have had something to do with it, but I think they hired some real tree cutters.
That's awesome. Big up Grandpa Casabon, or if it was another name.
Yep, Mato.
Le Parc. So you grew up in that little scene, obviously, in the early days. Do you remember the first X Games? Do you remember seeing the summer X Games that JP and JF did the backflip Japan where his fly was down with those old orange BFA pants that was featured in Freeze? You remember that, Iberg?
I couldn't tune into that at home, but I saw some footage. I'm pretty sure in perhaps the game, or maybe that might have been a year later.
Degenerates in summer of '98. Summer X Games did it in San Diego, a scaffolding big air. And summer 99, there was a scaffolding big air for X Games in San Francisco Bay. And then all the Tahoe kids went to the San Francisco one. And that was the one where Pastrana did the backflip into the ocean when he was like 15.
Damn.
Yes, that was pretty impactful. Do you remember that shot in freeze, Iberg, of the of JF upside down with his
I don't
fly
think
under?
so. I just remember I was so blown away that there's scaffolding jumps and people were doing tricks, and then they were in a summer locate. Everything was just epic. But no, I don't remember that exact shot. But I'm sure I got the magazine.
And so Phil, how did you guys originally meet? You and Iberg.
Iberg was rolling weed in the at the Orage Master in the Armada scaffolding boot, and he was I just have a image of him sitting on the ground and rolling doobie after doobie as Iberg does, and that's where we met unofficially. Maybe not for him. I don't think I actually
for
like.
sure. That was the year that you had the white overcoat and the yellow wig, and then like I made a video with Mikel where we just killed all the people, and you were killed by Mikel, and the DVD X is Dubsky. So yeah, and I met you at the house because Alex was there and your dad, and we had a humongous like mansion in Mammoth for Armada, and the investors were there, and yeah, I lived in Mammoth. Yeah, no, that was the first time for sure I met you. I was all stoked because you were the like first little kid on Armada. Because Phil was like 14, I was 24, 2004.
Was that the one that Candide came to and did that stall on the top of the thing, and then did the 3 out? Did a disaster stall on the top barrage, and then did the 3 out covered in black like a ninja?
They were all wearing suits that year.
No, so Iberg actually like had the good year figured, but not the clothing. The clothing was not that. That year that Candide was there was 2 years later.
Yeah.
Or a year later in life.
Also, it was the first. It was the first one with the back-to-back C boxes, wasn't it?
No, not quite. It was the first one that Orage had teams, and they had team captains, and JP was one, and he picked me. So I actually was wrong too when saying Iberg was twisting doobies. That's a year later, but I met it.
Yeah, because there wasn't an Armada team. Because Tanner and CR were on a team.
Yep. Yeah, Tanner had his team.
R.I.P. to Mr. C.R. Johnson. At the time, he was probably the best. Oh, I don't know about the second best skier on planet Earth. That segment that he had, where he did that right side 3 off that Donna cliff was he was on another level at that point.
Yeah, 2003 CR Johnson, man, might have been like him in the pipe, him in the backcountry, him doing everything. He was not normal. And then he obviously got
Ski Movie 3.
I think that's it.
Ski Movie 3, where he does the the 2 jumps in a row, where he goes left side cork 7 to that bio 10 that he used to do in a row of those 2 big jumps that they built. Do you remember that sequence?
Yes, sir.
That was pretty G. I think the only person
CNN Invincible.
Oh, you remember the track? That's pretty epic.
That was why it was so epic, man. That jam is wicked. Can't have a good segment if your song sucks.
No.
So fast forward a few years. How did you originally get on Orage, and what was the deal with that? Like that was a pretty big company. Was that Mike Nick that originally got in, kind of invested in that, or was that from Cyber Cartel, however you want to pronounce it, that led into that kind of person getting into freeskiing?
Mike, Mike, as you said, was I think he was already coming close to an end with Cyber Cartel at that point. He had nothing to do with Orage yet, but so they put me on Orage after a contest, one of the first contests I did in Bromont resort in Quebec, and they thought I did well, so they put me on, and they thought I was too small to wear the Orage gear, so they put me on the Orage for Kids, which was called Like Us, Laikus, which was very short lived, and that's how I started with them and grew with them since they were a Montreal based company, so it was really easy communication and on and on.
So were they originally a ski brand, or were they like another brand that actually just got into making ski clothes, and then they saw Freeskiing, and then they were like, "Oh, this is what the kids like," and then they kind of, you were the first dude that they sponsored, weren't you? Or that was before.
No, they had like Rex Thomas, Yannick B wearing the ugliest outfits in 2000. Just
Julian, maybe Julian Renier was on it.
Oh yeah, I remember Julian being on those original
John
ads.
Sims.
Yeah, Sims.
Yeah, they all had the green Ninja Turtle outfit going that year.
Mm-hmm. Orange.
But Rex Thomas, I think, was one of the first. If we go back to WSI in 2000, he was rocking it.
Yeah.
And there was a Quebec X Game skier cross girl named Anique Demers who won a gold in 2000. That was Arage's biggest skier. Just if we want to get technical.
We like technical.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think the brand owner meant it to be a free ski orientated brand. I think he started it in 1989, so definitely free skiing was not around then. So he started it more as a like outdoor brand, and then it became what it was because it just evolved around, and they just followed the trends, I think.
So fast forward, maybe 4 years, 5 years, you meet up with probably your number one brethren in skiing, Mr. Henrik Hallo. How did you two originally meet? And was it your mutual love for royalty and for probably Mikkel? Or actually, how about before that? How did you meet Mikkel originally? And was he the most influential skier as you were a kid? Because I still remember the first time I met Mikkel when I was 12, and he's from Morjan, which is on the backside of Chatel. I was on the Chatel Mogul team, and I remember him coming on. It was the first pair of Dynastar Concepts that I'd ever seen, and he came skiing with us for the afternoon. And my friend Floris, it was his cousin, and I remember talking to Cedric about it, and he was like, "Oh, that's Mikkel. He's going to be a big deal." And I was like, "Wow." Do you remember the first time you saw him?
Epic. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him for sure. Hard not to. I was in Les Deux Alpes for a fall contest on a stair set jib, and Mikkel just introduced himself to me and asked me what I was doing after the trip, and I was leaving back home, and he told me he was going to Budokan, which you both might be familiar with. It's a chalet in Switzerland that's close to Glacier 3000, and that is host
the
to
Mont Aubry and the B bar.
Yep.
Never been.
Exactly.
And 3000. All they do is
Mikkel extended the invitation and got me in on his whip, and I changed my plane ticket. He brought me to Budokan, and Henrik was living at the Budokan. I had already met Henrik a year prior, but had not planned to see him again, really. But that got us together, and that's when we made up the idea of making the B&E show.
Had you started smoking the herb at that young age, or was that a little bit older in life?
No, that was right about those times. Maybe I had started again because I had started very young, got caught, stopped, and started again. So that might have been my renaissance moment.
And when you were a kid in Quebec, how did you guys smoke weed? Did you smoke, like, did you remember trying to roll your first shitty joint, or did you have a bong, or did you? See, in Australia, everybody chops. We don't smoke straight, or I do, but I grew up in Canada, so. But here, you have a little chop bowl, you chop it up with tobacco, and then you smoke out of a little dirty Orchie bottle bong. So nice. It's pretty dirty. So like, but it's like a coming of age thing here, because we're, it's just cannabis culture is a little bit, we're very kind of ostracized out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Uh-huh. Yeah, our style was pretty rugged like yours. I'd take an aluminium
Oh,
can, and just
yeah.
put some holes in there.
Put some
And
holes in it. I remember doing that when I couldn't roll a joint.
yeah, it took me a while to roll joints. I think I was introduced to joints through my travels, because out here, people were using, like pipes or cans, or smoking hash from the tip of a cigarette into a plastic bottle with a hole.
Quebecers taught me about the hot knives.
Hot
I
knives are
never
Yeah.
experienced.
awesome. Fuck
That
yeah,
was
they're
that
awesome.
was the whole thing. They
Phil,
were
one of the
addicted.
first times I ever smoked weed, you remember Stephen Thomas? I met him at the airport at SMS when I was like 14, and he comes up to me with his little ratty dreadlocks that he used to have, and he goes, "Want to see my rollerblade video?" I'm like, "Who the fuck is this weird motherfucker?" And I'm like, "Yeah, show me." And he showed me his rollerblade video, and then we became friends. And I was like, I remember skiing with him, and he was like the best mogul skier. He had so much style. I was like, "Fuck, I want to be like this guy." So I just hung out with him like the whole week. And then him and B Divine, B was like fucking like 10 and he looked like he was 50 even then. And we went to High
Your
North.
crew was wicked.
We
Be fine.
went
And
to
Stephen
High
Thomas.
North, to the High North Hotel on the day off, and we smoked it. We got an eighth off the block, and we smoked it fucking out of an apple bong for like 2 hours. And then Stefan ate the apple. And I've never seen someone so high in my entire life. It was very, very funny. It's like interesting,
That's
those little
awesome.
young stories. Turpin told me a story about the first time he met Candide. He was at, I think, the same hotel. And he ended up sitting with Candide for like 4 or 5 hours just smoking weed with him. And Candide said like 3 words to him the whole time. So it's just interesting that those early days of like how cannabis culture was so impactful on a whole generation of kids that were just little, little fucking.
And
Little
just for the
fuckers.
fact that the highlight of listening to that story was you going, and he ate the apple. I
Oh,
love that shit. Like
that
you were
was-
that excited. It's
I was that
permanently
excited. I
put
still
in
am
your
that
head.
excited. It was like, so originally you started on Orage and then you started hanging out with Mikkel. Well, in those couple of years, were you spending a lot more time in Europe? In Les Deux Alpes and in kind of that little area of France, because obviously there was the new freestyle movement of David Bovard and Julian and Candide and stuff in France at the same time that the new Canadian Air Force was going off. Like, were you exposed to those guys as well? Because you're a francophone.
Only through Poor Boys movies, like The Game and Propaganda. But later, my parents took me on a ski trip to Chamonix, and that's how, like, around 12, 13 years old, was my first introduction. And then it took me a little bit till I got overseas again. But when I did go overseas, it was because I was trying to compete in skiing, and it must have been around those. It was probably for Orage European Open, because Orage had put me on some stuff like that.
King of Style, Sweden, late 2000s. You would
Oh,
go
that
to
was
in
the one
like
that
early
was the
season.
one that the Julian one with that big backflip mute to fakie.
I think he did very first one. But you're talking. You have to understand. Phil's like 5 years after these guys, 6 years after these guys.
No, I know
None
that,
of
but
them are in Phil's.
that was the same one. They only did the King of Style 2 years in 2 years. Pretty
I
sure.
don't think
Maybe
really, because when
maybe-
Phil did it, they had a rail jam before, and I think that was like year 3 or 4. But we're talking
maybe
15
I'm
years
wrong.
ago.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Who knows?
And did you ever did you ever do the Yoon Olsen, like, did you ever do the Red Bull Big Air back in the day in Aura before it became the Yoon Olsen Invitational?
Yeah, I was invited there. Yeah,
Did you go
Yeah, I went. Yeah,
to
I
Yoon's event
remember
or the Red Bull Big Air?
the Red Bull. No, not the Red Bull Big Air. The Yoon Jump, but it was Red Bull, but it's not the Red Bull Big Air. It's Yoon's event. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
did you
you
meet
went.
a nice?
You got a key to the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, I did. The Golden Key.
Did
Hell
you meet
yeah.
a nice little 18-year-old Swedish girl that made you a man?
18.
No good stories in my memory. It's really foggy.
It's really.
I don't
fucking-
think there were.
How did you?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about like half of my life traveling around the world skiing? I was more into free riding, was chasing weed, and going to random fucking places to try and get on, because a lot of these countries just don't have a cannabis scene. Did you ever get to smoke in Sweden? Because
At some point I did, for sure.
So it's
but
just a
not
memory.
not at that Yoon super session. I remember Henrik invited me to quote smoke some fruits, which he meant that he was smoking shisha, and he invited me to smoke shisha, but I didn't go.
And it's shisha hash.
No, shisha was shisha, you know, like this like huge pipe, like an octopus, like a few.
Okay, a hookah thing.
The hookah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, because
that's
in
fun.
Sweden, even now, like if you smoke weed, like you looked at like you're a fucking drug addict junkie. Like they're so progressive that they take on their wife's name, which I think is a bit strange. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, cannabis culture in Sweden is like very behind the times. I think that's why Yoon got divorced, was because he took on his wife's name. So it's not very masculine.
Some deep thought you have from the outside on the other side of the world.
Yeah, well, I'm you know, in Australia we're still alpha male fucking assholes.
That's right.
Poor motherfucker. So Phil, so you ended up hanging out with Henrik, and then that you dropped the B&E. How did you guys originally, like, you guys obviously were both obsessed with Wu-Tang, and how did you come up with the two nicknames coming together, kind of like Batman and Robin?
Yeah, those were already pre-established. Henrik got his from Mikhail Idolo, and I had my nickname from the crew I did rollerblade with back in the days when I was 13 years old. And when I got with Henrik, when Mikhail brought me from Les Deux Arbres to Diablerie, I got with Henrik, and I had been listening to Redman, Method Man, Wu-Tang was really my thing. And Henrik at that point was more into like Dipset genre, and we just fused and blended with our love for hip hop, really. But it was either, in my mind, Paul Bergeron, or at that point I got like the serendipity of the moment I got linked with Henrik. So Henrik was going to be the method man in the crew, but I had to find a duo. I had to
So
find
you were
another
already looking
person.
for a duo before you met Henrik?
Yep.
That's
And Paul was going to
awesome.
be it, but Paul, it so happens that Paul wasn't at the same places where I was that often.
Interesting.
It's true. Yeah, the world, man, brings forces together for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys were hanging out. So did you spend a bit of time like that season in France with Henrik, because he was living in and that was when he was on Ninth Ward, is that correct? Or was he on Scott still?
Full Night Ward at that point, I believe. Yeah, he was yeah, on the Mikhail train.
Yeah, because he had a pro model on. He had his first pro model on Ninth Ward.
Yeah, that's accurate. A few of them.
He had 4.
Did you know that B Divine even got a pro model on Ninth Ward? Shout out
No
to our
doubt.
friend B.
Yeah, all skiers sponsored by Ninth Ward had their pro model. I feel like.
I think it was just.
Maybe
I think so.
I think it was just the same ski with a different top sheet, wasn't it?
No idea.
I guess Rory had like a wider ski at some point, but most of them seemed like they were alike.
And same with the big mountain guy from Utah. I forgot his name, but he had pro model. Big
Nick Greener, his name was.
Greener.
I used to compete on the freeride tour with him. He's a funny guy. He was a fucking shredder, though. He had another brother too, named what's his other brother? I can't remember his other brother. It was
Something Greener.
Something Greener pastures maybe. So Phil, fast forward like 3 or 4 years. You guys have been hanging out for a while. Then you guys do the B&E Invitational. Who originally kind of put that together in your brain? Was that a brain fart of yours or a brain fart of Henrik's?
I think it was a lot of Iberg was orchestrating at that point a lot of so to backtrack a little bit, Henrik and I do 3 episodes independently. On our fourth episode, which was all done, we meet up with Iberg and Tanner at I Have 3 Festival in Annecy. They tell us about Inspired Media. We knew about it, obviously, but they want to put us on. We agreed to release our 4th episode with Inspired Media, Muddy Winters. And so Iberg basically put us on with Tanner, and the saga begun with Inspired and B&E. And at that point, Iberg was orchestrating a lot of the B&E stuff, but the inception of the Invitational, maybe Iberg, you could
so we started
illuminate us.
Yes. So in 2012, so with Inspired, every year we had different shit. We had movies, we had tours, we had all this stuff. So early 2010, Street League was huge. And like none of us, like in our circle at Inspired, was really stoked on how contests were going. Tanner was injured, coming back, so it wasn't there. Phil was just hitting the point where national teams were coming onto the scene and you had to do certain things. So it wasn't the same way it was for the first 10, 15 years of the sport. So we were looking at it, and we did a movie, in 2012, we did Education and Style with Tanner, Phil, and Henrik. And we're like, what's next? Like we did a documentary, we got them into some POW and Retallick. They were doing their own thing, same year as Retallick with Muddy Winters. We came all together, did Education and Style, like things were banging. We're like, what's next? And we're like, hey, Tanner had a position to do an invitational. So we're like, okay, hey, let's do Tanner Hall Invitational this year. And then next year we'll add a B&E Invitational. Tanner's will be the kind of the
Now, was that originally inspired by Candide's Invitational?
No, this was us wanting to make a series of events that were fun for people that we believe need an outlet for exposure that weren't X Games skiers necessarily.
So basically,
or Olympians.
You looked at Rob Dydrick's model and you were like, we could do that for skiing.
And we manipulated it, because it wasn't the Street League is all street, so like we're looking at, there's so many awesome things in freestyle skiing, whereas like Tanner's was this transition big air idea, whereas like quarter pipes, hips, whatever. And then we moved into Phil and Henrik's event. That was the evolution of a slope style, but we modified it off Holy Bowly, I think is the name of it.
Yep.
The snowboard event.
Sunshine,
so we're like,
Sunshine.
We put it on. Yeah, we put it on crack. If you look at what we created, it's like, it wasn't normal. And then the goal was the third year we had a B-Paul Invitational in Quebec. And then that would just be a basic big air or something at like Stoneham. And then our dream was we could invite everyone. And then all of a sudden we had enough exposure through our distribution outlets of live feeds and replays where it would have been a whole new outlet for people to just friends get together, have fun, and then do shit no one's ever done on features no one's ever skied before, including themselves. So yeah, it was kind of evolution because everyone who was part of Inspired, like, what can we do for you? What platforms can we give? And then involve everyone else into that platform. So it was kind of evolution, the B&E Invitational.
And so was there any plans to do any kind of big mountain in that? Like any kind of freeride invitational?
Tanner's always dreamed it. It's something still to this day. Like he looks at what Travis Rice does. Me, logistically wise, I would never want to do it. Already, like with you having to worry about the elements and then creating a feature and then hoping it all turns out perfect on that one day where you say go and God says no.
Supernatural's the natural selection to is the greatest thing that has ever happened.
Hey, I hear you, but I would never touch it as a producer.
And
let me go get a satellite truck and fly it into the backcountry.
I talked to Sammy about it. That Sammy got flown there, and Travis put him up and blah 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 blah, and was like interested in skiing, but then he didn't pursue it. And I was like, dude, like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like, you need. But
that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a Sammy. Like Sammy is this like leader. He's still.
It needs to be Candide, and Candide needs to back it, and then he needs to do it, and then win it, and then he needs to just fuck off again, and then get all those Euro sponsors involved.
Because I'd say right now, the only way I'll say it. So this is my call out to Tanner and Candide to finally fucking do something together for the first time in their careers. Tanner, Candide, get together, bring the continents together, and dominate. The two legends and icons that would love to ski with fucking whoever skied in it. I want to see it. Tanner Candide.
Travis Rice is on another level, man. That competition is just so well shot. The drone operator is just incredible. It's like a video game. And the terrain that they pick and the different resorts, it's just like, it's so fucking sick. And
agreed.
And it's amazing. Reinvigorated snowboarding. Like, it really is the next level of progression, and a lot of these other things are becoming stale. And as an avid consumer of action sports content, it's probably the most entertaining thing that's out there at this present time, in my perspective. the surf tour is basically trying to become the golf tour. Street league is kind of cool, but now you got all these little jocks that are just kind of. I guess street league's pretty dope because it depends on the course. But that natural selection is just so epically produced. It's in fucking incredible. What do you think?
So you're
about
saying
it,
you like
Phil?
it?
I fucking love it. It's amazing. Do you watch it, Phil, as well?
Yeah, definitely baffling on some different dimension. They crush.
So, what do you think of the state of freeskiing at the moment, Phil? Like, what are your thoughts on it as you're getting a little bit older? How much longer do you reckon you'll be in the game for? And where do you see skiing going in the next kind of 5 years with all these quads and, not 2100s, and obviously style is still around, but then there's also all these rollerblade like skiers that are doing like the top low kind of lame fucking daffy shit that's just so gay, bro.
Lame,
Yeah, there is
shit.
Yeah, like they do the lame daffy. So I'm talking about like the presses, the daffy press that top loaf kid does. Like, I don't know. I don't like
Digging
that.
yourself into a hole, dog.
I
Triple
think
dappies. I love that shit.
I think that shit's so lame, bro. That's just my opinion. I think style is not. I don't like this whole swerve movement. No style, like flappy hands, like it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't represent skiing well. And if you show the good way to look at how skiing is consumed is to show something cool to a non-skier and to kind of see how they digest it. From my opinion,
Yeah, it's always been that way too. Skiing's been showcased in some whack ways, and some people have showcased it with style and finesse, and that's why we came in the game pretty much is we maybe thought some of it was whack, and we wanted to make sure it was looking good. That's kind of why I am still around, other than the fact that it fulfills me and I make a living off of it, and I get to self-express creatively. But I think still there is some whack shit, but there is, on the other hand, a lot of very impressive, stylistic, and people that are doing their thing that really shine and make skiing look very good. And yet I see it just consistently grow in both direction in a way that is not desirable, and in the other way that is very desirable, that I love to watch some of these kids, is the way I dreamed to ski, and now they're doing it with ease. It kind of goes the same way with skateboarding, with the evolution. Like, there are some people who are atrocious and technical, and some people who are stylistically just beautiful to watch.
Style can last forever, Willie.
Shout out to Tom Penny. Yeah, it can, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. Icon state, like style is forever. Christian Hosoi, Tom Penny, fucking Christian Fletcher. This is obviously a surfer. Fucking Aussie Riot. There's certain dudes that just have that timeless style. And if you look at surfing now, they're starting to catch up. Like, there's a lot of people are acknowledging that just doing a big grab, a big stale fish, is more difficult than doing a full rotation, backside, 450 that they call, a 540 when it's really just a 450. So, that homage to that, that's why all those guys that are the best skaters in the world, when they meet Tom Penny, they're like, oh my God, it's Tom Penny. It's like Mikkel with a fakie 9 that he did at the US Open, that fakie 10, like, that's still the most iconic ski trick ever done, in my opinion. Like, it was so impactful and it was so stylish, and you could play that to somebody now 15 years later and it still would have the same impact. They'd be like, what the fuck? That was amazing. And if you watch kids now, it's just like, it's aerials with a grab, man. And it just looks lame. And it doesn't.
That's why I can still post shit of Phil from fucking 10, 15 years ago, and it's still smooth. It's not the fact that someone can do it bigger or better. is the fact no one else can make something look that smooth on something that basic. And like, that's why I'm going to just say right now, Phil's the illest, because if you can go to Michigan, if you watch his last piece with Mike Hornbeck, Truck Talk,
Yeah,
like,
that was pretty sick.
They go ski flat shit and it looks fun. And an average person is not even going to think, a kid in Michigan is normally going to think, oh man, I could never get good at skiing because this is all I got. I got to move out west. I got to go to academy. I need an airbag. And then you can go watch Phil just dominate a kid's backyard. And so, like, because he has that mental, it can go forever because everything's an option, not just the third jump on a slope style day that this needs to be performed. Those are the only people that need to retire.
Similarly to Mike Vallely, do you remember, the skateboarder? You remember his series where he used to travel around on fuel and he'd just kind of skate the most ghetto spots. He'd skate like a piece of concrete in the middle of Nebraska, and he'd be doing hand plant, street plant, bean plant, little twisty Rodney Mullen stuff, and it's just like having fun, and people can relate to that because it looks sick, and it's iconic, and it's timeless. And I think that skiing is finally at the point now where it's not about tricks; it's about how you do what you do and kind of what you do it on, as opposed to, you just did the latest switch. Well, switch doesn't exist in skiing, in my opinion. We don't have a stance, so when you do a fakie, triple 21.
You can say backwards is okay.
Yeah, that sounds kind of, I don't know about that one.
You don't want to take it backwards?
Have you guys seen how the BMX guys are starting to do like 540 like the kickers to fakie?
Yeah. I just saw some wicked.
Now that's fucking, he does like a cork 5, man, like a proper like Mikkel, like carved cork 5, and goes over the fun box. Phil, we were just talking about the first B&E and then the Town Hall Invitational. What was the Town Hall Invitational like for you with all those different transitions? Obviously, when you were a kid, did you ski much pipe, being from Quebec, when back in the day, it was almost like obligatory for a large resort to have a super pipe, whereas now there's probably less than 5 in all of Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are very few pipes nowadays. There's probably one in the whole province of Quebec, but there wasn't a half pipe at the resort I grew up, so I never skied transitions. I learned to ski transitions on concrete, basically, was my introduction to trannies, and otherwise, I never skied a pipe really thoroughly enough to feel myself. But on a skateboard, I also kind of understood the physics more because I could skate a quarter pipe, so I could understand how it worked, but never really got acquainted and felt comfortable in a half pipe.
And what was it like? What was that first invitational when you rocked up to Les Arcs? And they had all the banners on the flags, and that big course at the bottom of that chairlift. Was that a pretty impactful moment in your career, like where you're like, look what we've created as a team?
So Willie's talking about the second one because he actually went to the second one.
No,
and
I was at the first one and the second one.
Oh yeah,
I didn't go to the third one. The second one. Yeah, I was at the first one and the second one. The first one was the one when Candy did the double backflip out of the end of the pipe.
That was awesome.
And I ended up hanging out with you. I had breakfast next to your brother, Phil, Alex, and I ended up hanging out with him a bunch. He's a cool dude. I think.
Dope. Hell yeah.
He's a cool
guy.
My
brother was charged to do the live stream for the event, which was dope. He did the whole live stream for a pair of free skis. I don't know if you'd get that again in life.
When Nico said when that Nico Zacharic guy said the N-bomb on the live feed, right?
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I don't know if Phil was in the room when he did that. I know little Kiabumba Nico was in the room with us and one other person, I think.
That's kind of funny. Germans are guilty, so it is what it is.
It was like a record stopped for me. I just look at him. I'm like, did you just say that word? Like, what the fuck? And he's like smiling like the happiest human, like not even thinking. And I'm just like, man, a little different in Germany than America.
You're funny, Eric. You make me fucking laugh, dude. So, anyways, what was that like? That moment when you like kind of came across the first course that Les Arc bought for you, because they really rolled out the red carpet. That chick that was the marketing manager that Raf used to work with. I can't remember what her name was.
No, big up Baraf on all that, because as Phil's brother, he just said his brother worked for a pair of skis. What Raf did with all his connections on site in France, his dad was the cook, right? Like his dad made everyone food like at the venue that was working there. All Raf's like childhood friends were like, I made the trophies. Like it was an awesome group effort of every human making dreams happen. Sorry to interrupt you, Phil. Go back to your feelings, man. I want to hear them.
No, that's accurate. Well done on the shout out. Raph was instrumental for the B&E, and we hadn't mentioned them in the first part. But when I rolled up to that venue, to the snow park, if you will, I thought that was the competition renaissance for skiing. I thought that would be the way that comp skiing would evolve. That was the route that it would be needed to take for not only put like pressure off athletes, because when you're dealing with linear jumps and rails, the options are kind of limitless at some point outside of the realm that you don't want to die doing shit. So that course really allowed you to do things and be creative and just really do tricks that you couldn't do elsewhere ever. So there was no way you could practice for that event. Like there was no airbag setting you up for that course. So it was really like who skied the course the most, and just like really thought.
The coolest thing
You had to
that you
figure out a
guys
line.
did for that, the coolest thing that you guys did for that was invite the OG guys. You invited Dave Crichton. You invited, I think, obviously Candide, but he was obviously still at the top of the game at that point. Like what inspired that kind of OG, like, those. I remember one of the dudes saw Dave Crichton, who's like probably our age, Phil. You're a little bit younger than me, but not much younger. And they saw Dave Crichton and they like wigged out and they were like, "Oh my God, it's Dave Crichton." Like they made like a really big deal out of it. And like when I played Babyfoot with Julian, I was like, it's like, oh, that's fucking Julian. Like I don't really fanboy out on people, but because that nostalgia of when I was a child of Freeze and where mystery was still a really big deal, I still got that butterflies from when I met Julian. And I'd seen him around a little bit when I was a kid, but I never went to High North. I always went to SMS because my parents made me still become a mogul skier because they wanted me to go to the Olympics. And Australia was like, yeah, we were a bit behind with that kind of shit. You know what I mean? What inspired that you to invite all the OGs?
I think it was a common decision between Henrik Iberg and I, just doing some back and forth, and really Henrik and I also always been grateful for the people who came before and know that we wouldn't exist without them. So it was a perfect moment to show our pay homage to those people and show our gratefulness by inviting them to an event of a new genre.
And did you
And
guys
that was kind of the whole purpose of the whole idea of all the invitationals was, if you look at Tanner's event, I just looked at who we invited that year. I mean, we had Shimo there. We had Shoya there. We had Candide showed up. Turpin was there. Like the list of the OG. And the whole point was like, also, skiing is the only sport that gets rid of its legends. Like in action sports. Like other action sports, like praise their legends, give them a long term. If you want to keep riding or doing what you do, there's an outlet for you. In skiing, we saw so many people just get pushed out once they're injured, no matter how big they were. And the idea is, it's just like Tanner's more popular today than he was 10 years ago. But the industry doesn't understand that. They're just waiting for him to get injured so they can cut him and have a cheaper kid. But his name is so big that he can still move stuff, just like Michael Jordan's name gets bigger every year. So it's very interesting. Like that was a huge thing for me because I wanted to make sure there was an outlet for all these guys that still love skiing and still had followers and fans to like be like, hey man, that guy still does ski. And you know what? It makes those older guys feel like fucking the shit to even have that experience because no one gave a shit since we gave them phone calls for these invitationals. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah, well, it was strange. I grew up in one of the most localized surf places in the world, and then I was a skier. So everyone, when I was a kid, was like, "Why don't you snowboard?" Blah blah blah, bullshit. But I remember being a kid, and I always remember, like friends of my family were like Tom Carroll. He was like a 2-time world champion, and he was like in his 40s, and he was an Australian icon. Like he was famous, and in surfing, like, all the old dudes, they have a world masters. They have it's a big, all the old dudes, Shane Horan, fucking, Mickey Dora. That's from people still talk about Mickey Dora now. And that's from like the 50s and the 60s. People talk about Buttons. They talk about the Duke. They talk, so there's even a statue of the first guy that surfed in Australia at freshwater in Sydney, Duke Kukamung, however you say the last name. He was like an Olympic champion swimmer, and then he came over and went surfing here. And like that homage of that whole nostalgic old school. It's sad that we don't pay homage to that in skiing because, the guys that were doing it in the 70s, do you know who John Eves is, Phil? The Quebec
Nope.
OG. John Eves was the 1978 World Aerials champion, I think. And he was in
Bond movies, I think.
Yeah, he was in all the Bond movies with my dad's friend, John Faulkner. My dad moved to Verbier in Switzerland in 1976 with John Faulkner, who was in all the movies with John Eves. And then John Eves was in Fire, Ice, and Dynamite, Fire and Ice, that Willy Bonga movie. And like that guy was OG, bro. Like he was a fucking shredder, man. And like most people have no idea that guy even existed. And it's really sad that skiing doesn't pay that homage. Obviously, the 80s guys kind of got it, Schmidt and Plake, but that was because that was kind of the nostalgic. That was the one outlet. There was like 2 out of 100 guys that got props.
Yep. So that's the whole point. Now, like Phil and I are doing a show called Giving Flowers that we're going to start season 2. And it's like, if you really look at it, I always tell Tanner this. And like when we're growing up, let's say it's 1998, right? Think back in your head. Was there anyone skiing in 1998 that was dope in 1968? Oh, we lost Phil. But should we get a hold of Phil and I can continue this one?
Yeah. Continue for sure.
Should I wait till we get Phil?
Oh, if he comes back.
Yeah. All right, I'll just continue this story because Phil's heard it. So if it's 1998, we're all teenagers or whatever, there was no one dope in the sport of skiing that was dope in 1968. Now let's take the year 2000. Tanner Hall was dope. It's 2023. He's still dope. Same with Candide. There's no people like this. So it's super interesting with the sport because we're actually trying to create these legends and icons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a long-term work to do.
And how do you think people can pay homage to that? Like, how do you think that? Do you have any intentions of reinvigorating that kind of stuff, or is it kind of a dead horse that
No, I think we're doing what we can do with our Giving Flowers show. Like as far as that, making sure we can like document it, archive it, and put it out there. But maybe someone starts a Hall of Fame sometime. Maybe no one will do it, so I'll have to start one online just for fun. Just to get more and more. But I think because these guys are having such long careers, 2 decades long now, there's over a handful. I mean, even Sean Pettit's like 30. He's been a pro for like 2 decades. It's fucking crazy. And he's still young as shit. So
is he technically still a pro skier? Is he technically still
a snowboarder.
But does he ski at all?
I believe so. I mean, he's a big K2 guy, man. He's helping create a whole program with them for snow.
So yeah, he's a big K2 guy, but is he actually still skiing?
Yes.
How come he doesn't put out any content? Because I've never seen him. I've never seen.
I think he's taking more of a role. You know, it's kind of like you watch some of the older guys start, like Pep. He still skis, but he takes a bigger role. Eric Pollard. You know, all these guys still fucking kill it. You know, it's just a matter of where the energy's at the moment.
And Iberg, can you tell me a little bit more about the Tom Penny of skiing, Mr. Eric?
Are we gonna get Phil back on here? Because I want
Eric
him on
Pollard.
this one.
I'm here.
Phil, yeah, I didn't see you.
There we
All
go.
right.
Again.
So
Welcome back,
Pollard.
Phil.
What do you want to know about Eric Pollard?
I want to know about how much progressive, like how he was so much ahead of the. Like if you watch Royalty, the way that he was taking off with his edge carves and his opposite spins with those differentials that he was doing. That line that I think you filmed at Super Park, where he does that full line where he goes up the wall ride and then he does he spins both ways with the lip on blind two. Like that shit was like next level. Like he was my favorite skier. Like he was that huge fucking hip jump that he does that flat spin 3 off. Like that was some.
So I'll say this: Eric Pollard is the biggest artist that skiing's ever had. So I mean, you have athletes and you have artists, and freeskiing is like Phil's an artist, right? So we have an artist on the phone. Henrik's an artist, Tanner's an artist and an athlete. You know, and Henrik has a little bit of this, like, but there's still more of an artist because he creates more videos than all this stuff. So I'm going to put him in that. But Eric Pollard, like, visually, mentally, everything he does is a painting, right? So like even my first year when working with him, he has a trick list in his pocket at age 17. And so when he skis, he knows what he wants to do. He knows where the camera wants to be. He knows what angle it is. He's thought about his leg stance. He knows where his ski fits on his foot. He's so conscious of style and who he wants to be, just like how he'd have to paint a picture. You know, you have to be conscious of how you want to draw it, what your lines are, every single thing. And I'd watch him do this, and yeah, he's just the illest, man. If anyone's not seen, I think it's Drawn From Here is his movie.
That's incredible.
And if you watch this, it is the most epic movie I've ever seen in the sport of skiing. Like for our modern twin tip skiing, as far as a piece of art that's considered a movie, it's it. Because I sat there, and for the first 6 minutes, he had audio clips that explained who he was perfectly. And if you don't know him, he found the dopest audio to tell his story. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, you know what? How did you know all that? How did they? And those people made him who he was. You know, it directed him in the things, the experiences, the people that he's part of. And I don't know, big up Eric Pollard. He's just the wickedest. He's top 3. Quentin Tanner, Candide, and Pollard. But he is number 1 artist.
Do you think that was because of the Northwest culture that was so impactful on him of snowboarding? Because like,
yeah, he is on an island. You know, he's on a volcano. Everyone else skis on mountains. Everyone else has these things. His community was this mountain that's a year-round glacier. That's just like people that live under the fucking trees that don't see the sun. And then they go up to a volcano and go above the clouds and just fucking have the stickiest snow you've ever ridden. And when you go there the first time, you're like, what the fuck is this snow?
You've never been to Australia.
I haven't. So you probably have the same sticky shit. But at the same time, I mean, like, because it's even flatter, you know, like say summer glacier snow in Whistler, it's corned out, but like this stuff in Hood, it's different, man. Like how it settles after it snows, you're just, I don't know. You have to ski different, I think.
What
and
about
all
you,
his
Phil?
influences?
Who are your big influences when you were a kid? Obviously, Mikkel was a big one, but you know, were you pretty heavily influenced by those Northwest guys as well, like Griffin Cummings? And you know, obviously, this would have been when you were really young.
Griffin, not so much. It started off with Philou being my favorite skier.
Well, he was a G.
And
he was a G.
Yeah, Philou had that segment in the game with rock superstar Cypress Hill, and that really resonated. He had the same name as me, so I thought that was dope as fuck. So I related to him big time.
And
He's from Quebec.
He got second.
Everyone's named Phil in Quebec.
And he got second in the world bartending flaring championships. And he was sponsored by what was the rum company he was sponsored by that gave him the budget at the Petit Caribou? Appleton Rum. Was it Appleton?
I thought Caribou was just a sponsor.
No, he
the
was
bar.
sponsored by the actual alcohol company, and he got second at the World Flaring Championships. That just shows you how talented that dude is. Like, that's pretty fucking cool to get second at the World Flaring Championships, and you also happen to be like 6'4" and you're a pro skier. Like, there's not many people that have that multi-talented dimensions. Like, that guy was a pimp, bro.
Yeah, he is the first big man. Like, he's an inch taller than me. He was so big. I was just like, what the fuck? You do dope tricks? Wicked.
Yeah. Yeah, he shrunk. Or he's still the same size and height, but he shrunk. He's
No, he got on a bike. You know what happens to old guys when they get on bikes, man?
Different man.
His back to back left 9 to right 9 at WSI, where he didn't get the points that he wanted. That was one of the most impactful things that happened in that little area of skiing, because it kind of opened people's eyes to what was going to go on. That same competition, I think, or it might have been the year after, when Turpin did the whole run switch. Do you remember that, Phil?
Mm-hmm.
Those were like
that was like 2 years later, I think.
Was it?
Because when Falou did that, that was 2009. And why it was so crazy is like no one linked even big tricks on film. And then he linked 2 big tricks in a contest. Like, you never saw it. It'd be alley-oop 5 or straight air to 9, 9 to alley-oop, alley-oop to 5. Like the biggest combo in a comp run in 2000 was maybe an alley-oop 5 to a 5. Like, that's it. Like, and to see a right side and a left side 9 in a goddamn pipe, he's like Tony Hawk.
True.
So what was it like originally, Phil, when you were growing up in Canada as opposed to being in America? Like, how did you get onto the feeder teams before you got onto the bigger American teams, or was it because you had certain strategic sponsors you kind of got to skip that? Whether it's like your other homies like B Paul and his little brother, they never really became like full super pro international guys, even though they were almost as good as you. It seemed like they kind of got stuck on Canadian sponsors that didn't really promote them or run ads of them.
Yeah, I got really lucky with the encounter of the one and only JP O'Clair. Rest in peace. He put me on Armada in the first place, and that really changed the whole dynamic of my skiing and introduced me to a much broader audience. He also brought me to the second Araj Master. I was on JP's team then.
And also, no, Phil was the first person to get a free pair of skis from Armada that wasn't on the original Armada team. So 14-year-old Phil in 2004 was the first guy, like, other than JP, JF, Julian, Tanner, Boyd, and Anthony. 14-year-old Phil got the pair from JP. So it's like there's a lot of time and place in those comparisons when you make it to B Paul and Emil. And Emil's a lot younger too, so it's a different track. It's tough to just get the in. But then let's not take away from the work ethic of Phil, because he got that in 2004, and then it took 5 solid years of hard work before the X Games and the B&E show.
Mm-hmm.
I have one random question for you, Iberg. Do you know where the footage is of Andy and Pep at X Games?
Potentially.
Oh yeah.
You should try and find that and then archive it and put it out, because I really reckon that would make an impact. Because
I think after this amount of time, it's a lot more fun to answer the way I just did for the rest of my life, because I get the question at least once a month at some form for 15 fucking years. Like, I already had the question this month again, like, other than you. It's normal.
And how do we get K2 to make another Hellbent? Because, like, that was the best ski of all time, and for just fucking around in the park.
You're talking to the wrong person.
Get Armada to make a remake. So, Phil, what are you up to these days? You transitioned. You did the B&E. You did that. You did that 3 years in a row. I was lucky enough to be at 2 of them. I didn't come to the third one because I wasn't living in France anymore. Do you have any intentions of doing that again as skiing now? Do you think that skiing would support something like that? Obviously, you're still on Monster. They've been a major proponent of you doing what you get to do. And I think they back that pretty hard. Do you think that they would be in their wheelhouse to be able to do something like that again? And would you do it in France or would you do it in America or Canada?
Good questions. Shouts to Josh Bishop for putting me on Monster. First off, he definitely gave me a second or third win to my career, because otherwise I don't know if I'd be taking that much risk if it wasn't that good of a payoff. Yeah, there will be another B&E, and it is in the making right now. Who knows if it will be a digital version or a human version, but we'd like to have both happen, and the location will be on your computer screen and in perhaps a country called Andorra and perhaps a province called Quebec. That would be the goal.
So you'd like to do one in Quebec and one in Andorra.
Yeah, and to speak about it, there's no better person than Iberg, because he's definitely been putting this back on the table big time.
So Eric, you made a hiatus. You've been on hiatus out of on a little sabbatical out of skiing for the last few years. I personally am very aware of what you've been doing. What kind of brought you back into skiing, and what kind of impact would you like to make now that you're kind of back? And how do you see the landscape of skiing? Has it progressed? Has it gone backwards in the last kind of 5 years? You know, obviously I'm not exposed to it anymore. I don't ski that much anymore. I still love skiing, but I kind of got over it because it just seemed really stale. Just from my perspective. But now I'm kind of getting that bug again. And I'm just curious about, did you get the bug again, Eric? Was it necessity? And where would you like to take what you want to do with Phil and Inspired and all this stuff that you're doing with Shred Sauce?
I guess so. Like, we ended Inspired Media end of 2016, and the last project that I worked on was Be Inspired, and we put out Tanner's project Ring the Alarm. And so, like, to me, that was like, I did a huge original soundtrack with Walshy Fire of Major Lazer, Major Lazer was the biggest, most streamed band in the world, or DJs, whatever the fuck, in 2015. So I did all this, and I mixed hip hop and dance all together. I had 2 skiers. I never made a movie with 2 skiers before. I made 2 movies with 3 skiers, right? Idea and Education and Style. And we just murdered it. And then we gave it free and made sure the world saw it. So I was like, man, I want to go out on top. To me, that was like winning the championship, you know? So it was kind of like, I didn't want to hang on to something because it was a little frustrating, which it always was, to raise money, to be on the road every single day, whatever. But I happened to have my second child born a week before the premiere of 2016 Be Inspired. I had 2 children. I was in Denmark with my wife, and it just didn't look like it would be the right decision for me to keep sleeping on Tanner's couch and travel the world nonstop and give all my time to Tanner, Phil, and Henrik when I have a wife and 2 children. So I kind of replaced my wife and children with from Phil, Tanner, and Henrik. But at the same time, in my hiatus, I still did I still talk with Phil. I still talk with Henrik. I still talk with Tanner. I still talk with Kai. I still talk with Bellinger. And the list goes on and on and on of all the people I still work with and music and skiing. And so when it was the spring, just going through certain things and all these kind of things were lining up. I've been in Minnesota now for 5 years. And I was kind of looking at like how big skiing was here, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity being given to people here, or cool stuff, whether it's events like contests or tours or movie festivals or all this. So this was kind of like my spark, because now my kids are like 7 and 10 years old, where I'm like, man, I have some time to do something locally. And I really preach to Phil, to Tanner, to Henrik, to all my friends, like, you can do the most for your career in your community, right? Like, everyone knows you in your community because we all busted our ass to become who we are. So we're kind of a big deal in our community when people know about us. So I kind of take the same thing I've been pushing on these guys for years and being like, what can I do? So I kind of started to look. I was like, all right, I can make a slopestyle tour in Minnesota. So I created like a 4-stop slopestyle tour next year, the Inspired Freeski tour. And then everything's still inspired because I've always been inspired. Shred Sauce, what can I do in skiing in the summertime? all right, man, let's hook up with Shred Sauce. We used to have them on Phil and Henrik and B Paul's website. You could play characters that were them 10 years ago. So I hit them up. I go, let's do contests every week. So we got the Inspired Shred Sauce Summer Series. And then so we just finished with Henrik on the Sochi course with the Cali P song. Right now we're doing Phil's character on a big air in the National Stadium of Kingston in Jamaica, in Kingston, with Kabaka Pyramid songs. And then I just went down the list. I was like, what can I do? And then I made a list that's a page long, and I just kind of check it off every day when I wake up and go to the end. And I don't know. It just seemed like it was time. And then it snowballs because every phone call opens another opportunity of fun.
Now, cross over to you, Phil. You had your major success with Real Ski, or Real Snow, or whatever. I can't remember the urban ski competition that X Games ran. That kind of put you in a huge mainstream position as the recognizable, best urban skier in the world, which you probably still are.
Oh yeah, he is ever.
Did you get a lot of mainstream kudos for doing that? How hard was that going about, filming such a impactful segment in such a short amount of time? And will they ever do it again?
Thank you both for the kind words. That was the most stressful 2 months in my life, especially the first one. I did not know how to go about it, so I was kind of losing my head, just trying to do the biggest things I could possibly find. And obviously, I had the chance to have premeditated a lot of the spots that I wanted to do. So the first year of Real Ski, I was invited, but I was filming for Be Inspired, and so I turned it off just to keep shooting for Be Inspired, because that was the second year we was filming for Be Inspired, and that was the aim. So I turned it off. Then the second year I had blown my knee, so I couldn't do it. So the third year I could do it. So then I had kind of this pent up, pre-made idea of what I wanted my segment to look like, and so that worked in my favor. It was just I couldn't really parse out time and trick and how many clips would fit. Obviously, I studied every single Real Ski there were, and there was from 12 to 15 shots. So I kind of went strategic and just parsed it out, and had to have one clip a week or so. And it was stressful as fuck. It was cold as fuck also that year in Quebec, the first year. But it worked out for the best, and we got a memorable piece, Brady, B-Mill, and I. And the second year was easier because I had the formula down, and I was just going to not stress and make sure I'd get 12 heaters, and that was it. And I think that experience paid off.
And so that's how you thought about it, was that you needed 12 tricks, and then you just kind of wrote it all out and then went about ticking them off one by one?
Yep. And finally got 15, left 3 out of the piece, and just let the 12 ring for longer, and just not crunch stuff up and make sure there was some type of breathing in the edit.
And what
did you know every spot before you started filming that you were going to go to?
Yeah, pretty much. There was maybe 1 or 2 serendipitous, show up and this is there. But honestly, everything was really mapped out. I was planned out.
How did you find the most impactful spot, in my opinion, was the down rail to pretzel bomb drop redirect wall ride? How did you find that spot? Was that like a hanging staircase? Why? How does that place exist?
That's one of the many left off buildings in Quebec. Just I don't know. They must have been a water purification center or some shit, and something happened. Water went bad, but that spot was actually from Louis, the almighty snowboarder. He had it in a segment the year before, and when I saw it, I was like, that's the spot. I gotta get that. So I asked Louis if it was cool, and he was down, and we got the coordinates with Emil, and we showed up and made it happen. But it was some real engineering thing going on there. You had to build a platform in order to reach the rail because the in run was hanging in the empty space. So Louis had like done so much engineering, and when I showed up there wasn't even a way to get up to the rail. You had to add a 30-foot ladder to go up the staircase. So it was really like demanding with my like especially back then. I kind of was like, I'll hit whatever is easily accessible, and I don't have to put work into making happen other than like snow building. That's okay. But when you have to like use a grinder to cut metal and then use ratchets to tie a plywood to fill in the empty space and the et cetera, like I was like, fuck that. I ain't no carpenter. Like, I don't know shit about it. So that really put me out of my comfort zone. But with the right people, we made it happen.
And has there been any rumblings of X Games bringing that stuff back after COVID?
No, it doesn't seem like so.
So that you've kind of you've won it, you've done it. Would you like to do it again if the opportunity arose? Or you kind of like tick that box and
Nah. I'm doubtful I would, because it's a lot on the line, and also you give. Yeah, sure, there's a prize purse, but you also give that like footage. I definitely milk the cow with that shit, like making 2 movies out of it, and I think that was an era that is left me nostalgic, but not hungry for more.
And now, just one last question before we leave. Where would you like to take your skiing in the near future? Like, where do you see yourself? You've already pretty much ticked all the boxes. Is there anything else that you'd like to do or achieve?
To the 5th dimension, to another universe, for sure. I'm trying to branch out and make it so that the brand B-Dog is ephemeral and just long-lasting. Therefore, that's why I'm branching out and making these cartoon characters represent the character, and making sure also with Iberg that we're on it with the digital world, because it's unavoidable that we're going to face a big change with the artificial intelligence coming up, and we got to embrace it. So kind of like trying to tap into that and keep also the thorough work ethic that I have with like the movie making and on the ground shit. Just like keep going out there and also connecting with the skiers that I love and look up to make some memorable pieces and keep shining.
What about you, Iberg? Same shit, different story?
Yeah, exact same. This is long. Gonna be fun. You'll see it all in the next year.
Well, I really give you guys kudos. I've admired you two from afar for a long time. A lot of the content that you've created over the years, especially you, Eric, has been very impactful on my life. Phil, you're still the most stylish skier of all time. Up there with Mikkel, you're like you're one of the icons of the sport. You know, you're the heir apparent of the Tom Penny of skiing. So kudos. Thank you very much for your time. And Phil, where can we find you on socials?
Thank you very much, brother. That means a lot. I'm at Casabon on Instagram.
And then you, Eric? Inspired Media?
Just type Inspired Media TV on Instagram, and then we'll have the websites up probably whenever this airs. I don't know, at early August, and that'll be inspiredstore.co.
Well, Inspired to the World, Willys World Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. Keep it real, guys. Thanks for your time. Have a lovely, have an awesome fucking day. You guys have contributed greatly to the culture of skiing and just the culture of action sports in general. Enjoy your afternoon.
Yeah. You too,
Thank
man.
you, Willie.
Thanks.
Peace, man.
Peace, brothers.
Peace.
Thank you very much.